When Titanic launched in 1911, it represented something larger than a ship. It was industrial confidence. At nearly 270 meters long, Titanic was one of the largest moving objects humanity had ever created. Its engines generated over 46,000 horsepower. Its interior resembled a floating palace, and its safety systems were considered revolutionary. 16 watertight compartments divided the hull. Automatic doors could seal entire sections of the ship within seconds. Created a dangerous illusion. Because Titanic wasn't designed to survive unlimited damage. It was designed to survive 4 flooded compartments. The iceberg opened 6. And that single detail changed everything. Hours before the collision, Titanic received multiple ice warnings. Ships crossing the North Atlantic reported drifting ice directly along Titanic's route. The Mesaba. The Californian. The Coronia. Each transmitted warnings. And while some messages reached the bridge, others never made it to Captain Edward Smith. The wireless operators were overwhelmed. Not by emergency traffic, but by passenger telegrams. Titanic's radio system had become a luxury communication service. First-class passengers sent personal messages non-stop. And by the evening of April 14th, the backlog had become enormous. One of the final ice warnings was interrupted. The operator aboard Titanic reportedly snapped back. "Shut up. I'm busy." Minutes later, the Californian shut down its radio for the night. Titanic would never reach them again. At 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted something directly ahead. An iceberg. He rang the warning bell 3 times. 37 seconds. That's approximately how much time Titanic had before impact. First Officer William Murdoch immediately ordered a hard turn. And then, the engines reversed. But modern analysis suggests that decision may have reduced the ship's ability to turn. Instead of a direct collision, Titanic scraped along the iceberg side. At first, the damage appeared survivable. Passengers barely felt the impact. Some continued drinking. Others joked about the sudden stop. But below the waterline, the hull had begun tearing open. Not as one giant gash, but as a series of narrow fractures. Tiny openings, spread across a massive section of the ship. Together, they allowed thousands of tons of seawater inside. And trace analysis of recovered steel later revealed something important. The metal became brittle in extreme cold. Under stress, rivets failed. Plates separated. And the Atlantic rushed in. The first hour after the collision was strangely calm. That calm became deadly. Passengers were told there was no immediate danger. The ship still had power. Music still played. And many people simply refused to believe Titanic could sink. This hesitation created one of the disaster's most tragic patterns. Delayed evacuation. Titanic carried lifeboats for only about half the people on board. Even worse, many launched partially empty. Boat number 1 left with just 12 people. It could carry 40. Crew members feared overcrowding. Some passengers refused to board at all. And class divisions made the chaos even worse. Third-class passengers faced barriers, language confusion, and limited access routes. By the time the reality became undeniable, the angle of the ship had already begun to change. And panic spread rapidly. For decades, survivors who claimed Titanic broke apart before sinking were ignored. Many investigators believed the ship sank intact. But in 1985, the wreck changed everything. When Robert Ballard discovered Titanic nearly 4,000 meters below the Atlantic, the ship was in two major pieces. Modern structural analysis now suggests Titanic experienced catastrophic stress during its final moments. As the bow flooded, the stern lifted higher into the air. Eventually the weight became too great. The hull fractured. Lights reportedly remained visible even as the ship split apart. Then suddenly, darkness. And within minutes, Titanic vanished beneath the surface. The breakup itself likely killed hundreds instantly. Others entered freezing water measuring roughly -2 degrees Celsius. In those temperatures, survival time was measured in minutes, not hours. At 2:20 a.m., Titanic disappeared. The rescue ship Carpathia arrived nearly 2 hours later. Only lifeboats remained. The screams had already stopped. What investigators found afterward was not one single failure, but a cascade. Overconfidence. Communication breakdowns. Insufficient lifeboats. High speed in dangerous waters. Material weaknesses. Delayed response. And perhaps most importantly, the belief that a disaster this large was impossible. Titanic became a warning. More than a century later, Titanic still rests on the ocean floor, slowly collapsing. Iron bacteria now consume the wreck piece by piece. One day, it may disappear completely, but the trace evidence remains. Inside twisted steel. Inside survivor testimony. Inside frozen timelines reconstructed minute by minute. Titanic was never just a shipwreck. It was a chain reaction. A disaster built from small decisions, accumulating silently until there was no time left to stop them. And maybe that's why the story still feels modern. Because the real lesson of Titanic isn't that nature is powerful. It's that human beings are very good at believing disaster only happens to someone else. Until it doesn't.